going to talk into the microphone like this. My radio voice.
Very intimidating.
Oh, oops. Wait, let me make it a little
No,
bit more like
maybe not intimidating, but very like, this is my podcast and welcome. And it like you're like
welcome to my podcast.
owning your territory with it.
This is my territory. This is my madness and meeting territory. Welcome to it.
Or not, like
Get
whatever you
off my
want.
territory. All right, all right, all right. Hi. And welcome
All are
or welcome
welcome.
back. All are welcome, even the haters. We love you too.
Oh my
Love and
God,
light.
hi haters. You guys
Blessings.
have been so active lately. We love you. We love you even if you don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome here. So, hi, my name is Kelly. This is my co-host Amanda, and this is the Madness of Meeting podcast. This is a very different introduction than we've ever done, but I'm kind of here for it. Probably because I am doing it for like the second time ever. Always I get Amanda to do these introductions, but you know what? I'm taking center stage today, girl. So here we are. And this episode today, like quite a few of our episodes in the past, was birthed out of kind of a side conversation that came out of our previous podcast episode, which was all around finding your purpose or being in purpose and the concept of meaninglessness. We ended up having a side conversation around being in alignment and questioning whether you could ever actually be out of alignment. And I proposed that to Amanda as a potential topic for an entirely different podcast episode because I think the term being in alignment, being out of alignment is thrown around a lot, especially in the spiritual community. I think I also use the word alignment or what is the most aligned step forward or how do I be in alignment with my higher self and all of these little ways that we kind of spin the same thing. And I kind of just wanted to have an exploratory conversation with you about this, Amanda, because I think there are some nuances to it that I'm learning could be there about this. And I don't really have any clear answers on what that is. Some of them started to come through, I guess, in our last episode where we started to question whether it actually might not even be a real thing. Like, can you actually ever be out of alignment? And there was kind of a resonance in both of us that said, no, like everything is kind of in alignment, the same way we were talking about like everything is on purpose in our last episode. Everything has a purpose and you could never not be in purpose. And so this is going to be kind of a very similar conversation, but I can imagine it's going to be taking a lot of different twists and turns as well. So I would love to hear some of the notes slash rants that you came up with when you were planning this episode.
Before we get on these podcasts, I always like to gather my spirit guides and talk things through. And they were hot on this. They had a lot to say, and it was quite humbling to say the least. When I entered the spiritual spaces when I really first started hearing that term alignment, and no one ever really explained what that meant. They just use it all the time, sprinkling it in here and there to remind you that you're probably not on alignment yet, but it's something that you should be desiring and aiming for. And so as I traversed my own spiritual journey, that was always something that was top of mind, was getting into alignment. What would that look like? How would that feel to be in alignment? Am I there yet? Well, I don't feel great, so probably not. And then
Right.
the more I worked with you, the better I felt, and I started to show up differently in my life and take different action and kind of did a 180 with everything, especially in terms of my business. And finally, I was doing work that I felt deeply inspired by. And so I decided this feels like it's more in alignment. Did I really know if I was in alignment? No, because no one really took the time to explain to me what that was. Still don't really know what that means. Um, but I felt different. I felt really good. I felt really fulfilled inside of my work, really purposeful inside of what I was doing, and felt this deep sense of connection inside of myself and inside of the the space I was holding for clients. And so that felt more in alignment for me. And I really gripped onto that idea of alignment. And I decided that I was going to be a soul alignment coach. That's what I called myself. And it's still there on my website. I haven't changed it yet. But that term alignment really resonated for me inside of how I was feeling in alignment inside of my own life and the way I was showing up and the work that I was doing. And so I wanted to help others find alignment too. Um, and so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of my like doorway into how I would like to focus, I guess, this conversation to start is this term is thrown around. Nobody really has come out and defined what alignment means, but we look at ourselves and we look at people around us and we perceive them to be either in or out of alignment according to our own set of belief systems. And I would like to fully explore like what we believe alignment really means, what that really looks like, what that feels like, and if it's possible to feel in alignment, even if it doesn't look like you're in alignment, how to tell if you're in alignment, and how to tell if someone else is in alignment or not. And then just see where that leads us. That I throw that
Yeah.
at you. But
No, no, that's
that's
good.
how that's what I've been grappling with.
Yeah. Well, you gave one example of something that we have kind of automatically attached to our perceived definition of what being in alignment means. And you said that because you felt uncomfortable or you felt bad, then that meant you were out of alignment. And I think that that's something that we just unconsciously attach to it. And it's perpetuated by a lot of different content out there in the spiritual space as well. It's like if you're feeling off, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're not feeling fulfilled, then that means you're out of alignment in some way. But we can kind of squash that right away, kind of using some of the conversation that we had in our last episode, where we became really clear on the fact that that also has purpose. Like it might be guiding us somewhere. And maybe the nuance to it is that depression, that anxiety, that lack of fulfillment could be there to try to guide us in a different direction that would be more in what is in quote unquote alignment or is more of in service to us and our best benefit. But it's not that it's out of alignment equals bad, like you're doing something wrong. It's just that there might be certain signs that are trying to steer you in a different direction that we call that being out of alignment. And I think that my best way of trying to describe what being in alignment or out of alignment really means to me is just by it's through my understanding that we come here with certain lessons that we came to learn. Like our soul wanted to be here, live a human experience in this human body so that it could deepen into certain lessons, deepen into certain experiences, and also just experience certain things and become more fulfilled in that way or have certain lessons come out of those experiences. And so, if we're talking about being out of alignment, it would sort of make sense to me that maybe that means that we're kind of coming off track from learning those certain lessons. And maybe that's because we're stuck in a lot of resistance, which again has purpose, but that's the nuance to it. Or we are really caught up in um, letting our ego take the show or whatever it is. And I think that we come here wanting to learn certain lessons, having certain experiences, but obviously we also have free will, and we're not necessarily going to experience every experience and take away every lesson that we maybe came here intending to have. And that's a part of the game. It's just sometimes we lose, sometimes we win, I guess. And the ones that we lose at, and it's like, great, I get to do that the next time or whatever. That's at least my interpretation of it in the way that I
Sure.
conceptualize it. And so I'm curious your idea or your thoughts around this idea that being out of alignment means we're coming off the pathway of learning maybe a certain lesson that we came here to learn.
I think this entire conversation of we're here to learn lessons, or if we don't learn the lessons, we're not in alignment, and alignment means feeling good. And if you're not feeling good, then you're off purpose, you're off path, all comes from the belief system that we're not supposed to be in struggle
Right.
and that struggle is wrong. Who's to say that you're not in alignment even when you're struggling? Who's to say that you're not in the middle of learning the lesson, in the struggle?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and I think that comes with us trying to perceive what the lesson is when really we might not know what the lesson is. We might think the lesson is I need to learn how to love myself. And then like every time that we struggle with that or we're caught up in self-criticism or self-loathing or we struggle with body image or whatever it is, then we call that being out of alignment. We make that wrong when really maybe the lesson actually was to learn how to be with ourselves inside of all of those self-loathing, self-critical experiences, which can lead us towards the path of learning how to love ourselves. But we're kind of like missing the point where we're trying to get to some destination, calling that where we're the lesson and what we're supposed to achieve, when really we're supposed to achieve allowing ourselves to be in the process.
like, who's to say that we're here to learn lessons?
Yeah.
Like I'm just throwing this out there to open up a conversation where we can start to really inquire around these spiritual concepts that are very subtly used as a way to help guide us, but in doing so, unintentionally might create a lot more fear, anxiety, and feelings of unworthiness than they're perhaps meant to.
Totally.
And how does one learn a lesson? Like, what does it even look like to learn a lesson? You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
it a learning a lesson to me is just having a new awareness of something. And in order to have a new awareness of something, you have to experience something. And so
Right.
your entire life is an experience of different things. And so you're constantly learning lessons. That's my
Yeah.
interpretation. And sometimes you have to come back multiple times and experience things in a slightly more nuanced way in order to learn something new from it each time because you're going to be in a different body with a different perspective, with a different set of circumstances, and see things differently. And
Yeah.
who are you to say that someone else is not learning their lesson or not? Like, you don't know what their perspective is. You don't know how they're feeling. And I would turn that back around on me too. Like, who am I to say that I'm not learning something from the experience I'm having, even though it feels like I'm not moving anywhere? And so I question the notion that we're even here to learn lessons. Like, I think we're here to experience ourselves, and whether or not we learn something from it really doesn't matter. I don't think the soul, honestly, has any expectations for their experience. I think that they do create they put certain things on your path as opportunities to experience certain things just to see what would happen if you did. Like
Yeah.
if I had this if I came into this lifetime and chose certain things that led me to a certain point where I would learn how to trance channel, what would that be like?
Mm.
What would I choose to do with that? That's interesting. Maybe I'll make that an option depending on the choices that Amanda makes leading up to that point in time. Let's play with that, see what happens,
Yeah. I love
right?
that because it takes the job out of the learning of the lessons. Like just being in the experience is the lesson. It is the purpose. It is the alignment. Like there's nothing that we can do. And again, taking away the polarity from our previous conversation, last week's episode, you could never not be in alignment. You could never not be in purpose because you are already experiencing the experiences and the lessons that were meant to be there. And if you're experiencing it, it's because you were meant to. There's never like I was meant to learn this lesson, but I haven't yet, or I'm struggling to learn this. No, that is the experience. That is the lesson. And I had this like, I don't know how um accurate this idea is going to be when I try to put it into words, but I like to think of life as a game a lot of the time. And comparing it to certain games, like obviously there are video games and stuff out there where there is like a purpose to each part of the game. Like you're supposed to beat this level and you're supposed to get to the end of the game and you're supposed to get certain things. And I think that's how a lot of us perceive our lives is we're supposed to move up the ladder in some way, get this lesson, get this achievement, XYZ. And then there are other games, and maybe I can't think of specific examples, or maybe it's not a perfect example, but like there are some games where you kind of just play it for the purpose of playing it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Sims.
Well, ultimately, that's what a game is.
Yeah,
You're not playing the game to beat the game. You're playing the game to experience the game, and beating the game is a part of experiencing it.
right. But I think some people do play some of those other games and like are operating from that, like, I need to beat the game. I need to
And then it's
get this
over.
over with. Right. Yeah.
That's
And then it
that's not,
wasn't enjoyable.
yeah. I
Yeah.
were you going somewhere with that? Sorry.
No, it's okay. You
Okay.
go ahead.
I maybe I'm just like fired up today. I don't know. But I was contemplating this earlier, and it almost like made me break my heart a little bit, where so much of our entire lives is focused around wanting to be loved. That's always what it comes down to. And wanting to feel seen and valued and valuable. And I think that these spiritual terms and ideas really lend itself to that same concept. Like the notion that I'm finally in alignment means that I'm feeling fulfilled in my life. I'm feeling valuable inside of the work that I'm doing. I'm feeling loved. I'm feeling deserving of whatever success and accolades and recognition I'm getting. And I think that's what it comes back to again. And
Always.
it's just this adorable, innocent desire to feel loved. And it takes on these different iterations depending on the community that you're in and the language that they use to describe that. And that's kind of, you know, the idea that I came to in exploring this topic today. And for me, alignment is a feeling of fulfillment. I'm feeling fulfilled inside of myself and inside, I think we do equate alignment with the work, again, the work that we do, the job that we have, right? Do I feel fulfilled inside of it? Do I feel passionate about it? Am I happy? Am I making a difference? Am I making an impact? Am I getting the recognition that I want inside of the work that I'm doing? Can I check all those boxes? Yes, then I'm in alignment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that when we recognize that this is all about our really sweet, innocent desire to be loved, then we can still play the game, but with a much more intentional and conscious understanding of the game. It's not like I need to beat the game, be in alignment, be fulfilled, be happy all the time, never struggle, serve people, XYZ, whatever we're calling being in purpose, being in alignment, in order for me to be okay, be safe, be loved, be worthy, be whatever it is that I want to be. We can see that, okay, those two things are kind of separate. Like I am love, I am worthy of love. Like there is no polarity to that. That is just a given. And I am always going to be on the path that I'm meant to be on. And when I am on a certain path and I don't want to stay there, then there will be things that can guide me around how to get to a place that feels better or whatever. Like there's just an aspect to this life experience that can be more playful because it's not that serious. It's not like I'm not in alignment. I have to figure out what I'm doing wrong? And what
Yeah.
trauma do I need to heal? And all of that stuff. And that can be great too. Like, let's allow that to be a part of the game, but let's not make it be like we can't be okay until that's completed because it's never going to be completed. There is no completion to any of this work. It's just the experiencing of it that we can ground ourselves in more fully.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, again, deciding you get to decide the parameters around what you believe alignment to be, what that's going to look like, what that's going to feel like, and do you feel that you've achieved it yet or gotten there yet, or are you inside experiencing that yet or not? And depending on the parameters that you set, you can decide yes or no. And if the answer is no, you don't necessarily have to do anything about it. You
Yep.
can if you want to. That's, again, it's your prerogative. And I also want to put forward the idea that you can feel in alignment despite doing anything different. If you don't feel fulfilled, happy on purpose, you don't have to do anything different inside of your life in order to access those feelings internally. You can create a different experience for yourself internally with your entire life remaining exactly the same. It requires making different choices, requires a different perspective, but that's also an option.
Hmm. Would it be okay if we explored that process a little bit more? Because I know we did in a
Yes.
previous episode, but I think it's something that we can always reiterate and add a little bit of nuance to given this specific topic around alignment.
Yeah.
And so if someone is listening to this and they feel out of alignment in some way or they resonate with that term and they've been trying to fix that through all of these external means, like what trauma do I need to heal and what thing do I need to let go of? And what person or group of people do I have to let go of in my life, or whatever it is that we learn creates alignment or disalignment. Um, and that's not working for them, or they realize that maybe that's not actually what they're meant to be doing, then how can we start to create that sense of alignment and fulfillment internally without having to do anything different externally?
Well, I think that it comes down to one, being ready to let go of the idea that you have to change something. And I do think that that's not a one and done process.
Yep.
Like for me, for example, my I constantly come back to money, clients, business. Like that's always what I grip onto when I desire to feel fulfilled inside of myself. So whenever I want to feel like I'm in alignment, that's always how can I make more money? How can I get clients? How can I build my business? So that's always my go-to. And I've been working on detaching myself from that for a couple years now. And it kind of comes in waves. So I think that the misunderstanding inside of this transformational process is that it's going to be linear and you're going to notice a very big difference over time. And that once you progress in a certain direction, you're never going to backpedal. And if you backpedal, then you're doing something wrong and you're out of alignment again and you're not on purpose. That's not my experience of how that works. It's a flow. It's like a wave. It comes in and it goes out. There's expansion and there's contraction. And so I find myself gripping onto my same old things of I need to find more clients. I need to make more money so I can feel more fulfilled, so I can feel in alignment. And then it's like, oh, there it is again. Release it. Relax, release it. So I just wanted to preface this conversation by saying it's gonna be a very back and forth, in and out kind of experience. So once you have that understanding going in, I think it's recognizing where you have been gripping onto areas of your life in an attempt to feel differently and coming to the understanding that those things can stay the same and that is okay and that is safe, and creating a level of acceptance inside of that idea. And that's a very long process.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. But I think you demonstrate it really well with just like your process of going through the waves. And then now every time that that new wave comes in where you feel gripped by this idea that you need the money, the clients, the success, the business, etc., you're not entirely identified with it. You're able to
Yes.
see it and you're able to recognize it as like, okay, here you are again. Like just seeing it as a wave, seeing it as passing, not seeing it as a failure as well. I think that's a big part of it. We don't want to judge that it's happening. You judge something, you're stuck with it. But
Yeah.
we want to be able to recognize it as, well, coming back to our conversation from last week, this can be purposeful too. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something wrong or that I'm out of alignment or whatever it is because I'm experiencing the grips of this thing that feels uncomfortable. It just means that it's happening. And I can choose to believe that it's happening for me. Maybe I don't need to know why, but I can just choose to believe that blindly because not believing that creates a lot of our resistance to it. And then it's easier to just get caught up in it and get stuck with it rather than just coming to that place of acceptance of it. Like you said, is such a huge part of this process and it's going to take a long time.
Yes.
There's also this experience of seeing it, recognizing that you need to accept it, and then not accepting it still. So there's kind of layers to it, right? It's like I see that I'm having this wave. I see that this is really uncomfortable. And I also see that I shouldn't judge it. I shouldn't resist it. I should just allow it to happen. I should accept this process. I know that it's happening for a reason, but we're still gripping it. We're still like, but I want it to go away. And why is this happening? And when am I going to be over this? Right.
Right.
And so then it becomes a practice of accepting that too, accepting that you're not accepting it.
Yeah. Ultimately, what you're aiming for is to love yourself unconditionally. That's
Yes.
ultimately the quote unquote goal and where you're aiming with the work. And that requires a level of acceptance of your circumstances, things that you feel ashamed of about yourself, things that you haven't been able to change or fix that you wish you could, relationships that you feel like you're not showing up in, that you are, judging yourself for, anything about yourself that you're holding resentment, shame, or judgment around, and finding a way to create acceptance of them and for who you are in the now moment, not in some future circumstance where you can finally feel like you've earned it or deserved it.
Yeah. Can we get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to love yourself
Please.
unconditionally?
Yes.
Yeah. Because I think we hear this term, love self, love yourself, self-love all the time. And it's very elusive. It just feels like this like destination you're supposed to arrive in. And then we try to define what it is internally. Like loving myself means that I don't think negatively about myself anymore. Or loving myself means I take care of myself. Or loving myself means I set boundaries and I don't care about what other people think or whatever. And those are fine. And there might be some validity to those being an expression of self-love. But it's so much more nuanced than that. And I think my most raw experience of just loving myself unconditionally is when I can access that like sense of just like oneness with everything inside of myself, seeing the purpose of everything, seeing the perfection of everything, seeing that there was never anything wrong with anything, and being able to almost like meet myself and my humanness from that perspective, and even like talking to myself from that place. You and I have both had practice with like creating dialogue with our higher self, and that's kind of the way that I see it, where it's like our human self, our ego can kind of be like, nothing is working. Oh my God. Like, what's wrong? What can I do to fix it? Like, I'm so resistant to everything and I can't let this go and blah, blah, blah. And the level of self-love that I think a lot of us might think, like, okay, how can I love myself in that moment? It would just be like, basically just saying like, but I love myself and it's okay and I trust and whatever. And that's
I like how
That's
you,
fine.
the expression that you made when you did that was hilarious.
Yeah. I just need to let it go and whatever. But I think really meeting ourselves with love looks more like I understand why I'm freaking out. I see that this feels really hard, and I see that it doesn't feel okay, and that's okay. And I don't need to be any different than I am right now. And there's no destination that I need to get to. And there's actually nothing wrong with me at all, even though it feels like there is. And when I can speak to myself from that place and try to feel the resonance in it, like the truth of, oh shit, is actually nothing wrong. But like I also have permission to feel like everything is wrong at the same time. That's what feels like unconditional love to me.
And I want to add that there are different layers to this. What Kelly is speaking to right now, I think, is the mindset layer.
Mm,
Because I think it's very easy to say those things, but not fully mean them.
that's true.
And for me, it's not enough to say the the truthful things. I have to feel it. And I think it depends on the person, but recognizing where you might be, you know, judging yourself, shaming yourself, and that those thoughts and belief systems might not be true is only one piece of the puzzle. If you peel a layer back underneath that, there's the emotional layer where it's time to feel all the shit that you've been running from your entire life, all of the reasons why you can't be okay until you are in alignment.
Mhm.
The fear, the shame, the judgment, the sadness, the self-loathing, like literally feeling those emotions. And then you peel a layer back and sitting with the sensation somatically. And then you peel a layer back and like feeling what it would feel like to feel love for you, not just say nice things, but
Yeah.
feel love, feel it, like the emotion of it. And so
Yeah.
I this is a process. And that's why it's not a one and done thing. And that's why there are waves to this and an expansion contraction process. But for me, it's been really important. Everyone's different. Everyone's going to resonate with this in a different way. For me, it's been really important to sit with my shame, like
Mhm.
feel my shame, literally feel it, and then send it love. And that can look differently depending on how you want to do that. But that is the only way that I have been able to work through this for myself and to find self-acceptance has been through that deeper, more emotional layer.
Yes, absolutely. And when we're talking about the emotional layer, expressing from those emotions of shame, fear, sadness, guilt, regret, whatever it is, and then being able to send that love, I think practically what I've discovered that that can look like for me is expressing emotionally. Maybe it's saying it out loud, maybe it's writing it out, but just rawly speaking from that emotion, from that shame, and allowing it to express itself. And then just noticing how I observe that. Because as soon as I'm expressing it, I can be the one that's observing what's being expressed, right? And there can be different experiences of observing it. There can be observing it and wanting it to go away. There can be observing it and judging that I have that feeling or judging that I'm not over it yet or whatever it is. But then when we can then become the observer of that, and we can do this however many times we need, but it's coming back into that observant view of neutrality, which I think is where we find love, where there is no, this is wrong, or I need this to go away, or this means something bad about me that I'm feeling this way, but it's just like, I'm feeling that way.
When there is no longer a semblance of need,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think we touched on in a previous conversation. When you feel like you need something to be okay, whether that's something to go away or something to appear, something to change, then always your sense of self-acceptance is always going to be conditional on whether that happens or not.
Definitely.
And I think coming full circle, if we were to bring that back to alignment, for me, that's what it is no longer having any semblance of need. And I have determined that for myself. That is a definition of alignment that I have created inside of myself, is when I no longer feel like I need anything, then I am in alignment. And I have been able to access that. It's not a constant inside of my life. Again, there's flow to it, but in those pockets when I have been able to fully access, I really don't need anything right now. I don't need
Mhm.
anything in my life to be different. That has been my, I have been able to access full unconditional love and acceptance and true fulfillment. And for me, alignment in those moments. And if that means that I never get the clients and I never make the money and I never grow the business in those moments, I am completely and utterly satisfied by that.
Yeah, it's so good to access that. And it's interesting to access that and to have a reference experience of it and then watch ourselves dip back
Yes.
into the need.
Yes.
What's your experience of that, and how has your experience of that evolved over time?
Oh my God. Okay. That's such a fantastic question. The first 35 years of my life were all need. I was always needing myself to change in order to feel good. And I never quite got there. And I tried. And Kelly can attest to how good of a student I am. I work really hard. Nobody does their homework more fiercely than I do. And
True.
if an opportunity presents itself in my life that is going to take me closer to the thing that I believe will allow me to access inner peace and in love, I am going to jump on it. There is no missed opportunity for me.
Hmm.
Um, but somehow it never fully amounted to anything. And so that was like the existence that I lived in for 35 years. And then very slowly, Kelly started to show me a different way of being where I could feel differently despite my circumstances changing. And I was like, no, there's no way that's possible. So I went from not having the awareness to having the awareness and outwardly being like, nah, I don't want that. I want the thing. I want the thing to change.
Yeah.
And then I went from struggling against the potential for something to feel something different despite my circumstances changing, resisting that, to like pulling my hair out because what I was doing still wasn't working. And Kelly was very patiently still trying to show me this other thing that was available to me called self-acceptance and love. And I was like, no, I don't want that. I just want to get the money and have the clients. And then it it got to a breaking point where it just was not working. And
That's
I
right.
had to try something different. And I tried it and I was sort of resisting it as I tried it, but I tried it because I thought, okay, if I try this, maybe I'll get the thing after. So I was sort of trying it as a means of getting to the thing rather than as a means of finding self-acceptance. And that wasn't working. And I was so frustrated, annoyed by that. And then I slowly gave into, I just want to feel good. Fuck everything else. I just want to feel good. I'm sick and tired of feeling this way. And then I finally opened up to giving myself permission to let go of the thing and fully open up to love. And I accessed it and I was on cloud nine for a little while. And then nothing outwardly changed, even though I was feeling good inside. And slowly that started to creep up on me. And then I got sucked back down.
Hmm.
And ever since then, it's been this ebb and flow of I'll have periods of time of like popping out of it and then periods of time of getting sucked back into it. And when I get sucked back into it, it's hell. But every time I get sucked back into it, there's an equal and as forceful elevation outside of it.
Yeah.
And so every time I get sucked back into the muck of frustration, self-doubt, fear, shame, when I do pop out of it, insight comes in. ideas come in, inspiration comes in. And so it's not a backwards motion and a forwards motion leading to no movement. It is all happening, guiding me in a certain direction, which is why I personally believe that it's very hard to say is somebody in and out of alignment because you can't see the full picture.
Yes. I love what you said too. I would just want to highlight about how like there's the expansion and the retraction that kind of like comes in equal opposite intensities. Because
Yes.
I think that watching myself go through that process over and over and over again, similarly to you, like accessing the peace and the happiness and the contentment with my life, regardless of my external circumstances. And then, no, I need my external circumstances to change. And why aren't they yet? And then accessing that first part, but more grounded in it. And maybe it lasts for longer and it feels even more true. And then it gets really intense in the opposite way again. Experiencing those creates this detachment from it in a way where I just kind of think like, well, this is leading me somewhere. It's not going backwards because I'm experiencing this, because I've gotten enough proof and evidence time and time and time again that these expansion and contraction periods are purposeful, that they lead me somewhere that I end up being happy with in the end. Right? And so there isn't as much of a resistance to those periods of retraction, because even though they feel uncomfortable and even though maybe a big part of me is like, I want this to go away, I want to stop experiencing this, I want to just be over this but already, another part of me can come in and ground in this idea that no, there's something good about this happening. And I can trust that more fully because I've just experienced it enough times.
I I and I don't think that you can fully understand it until you've experienced it.
I think
I
so.
think you can hire the coaches, the healers, the mentors, all you want, and they can tell you these things 1,000 times. But until you actually go through it, you don't fully trust it because you've never seen it for yourself and experienced it for yourself. And that's why I think that you just kind of, it's like paddling against the current. And when you finally just surrender and you're like, fine, take me wherever this is leading me, and you just like allow the current to take you, it does lead you somewhere. There's an intelligence there that's really hard to understand from our perspective.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. And it's totally normal to not trust that intelligence for as long as you want to. Don't never trust it if you don't want to. But similarly to what you were talking about earlier, when we just get to a point where we realize something isn't working.
And I
Yeah,
think that that's typically what needs to happen is you need to get
right.
so fed up with yourself that you're just willing to try something different.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that trusting in this intelligence that is bringing us into aspects of our life that our ego, our mind tries to label as good, bad, wrong, right, out of alignment, in alignment, etc. But who are we to say that that intelligence isn't doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing, or it's not leading us exactly where we're supposed to be in any given moment? And we can choose not to trust that. We can choose to continue believing that there is a right, there is a wrong, something that I'm doing isn't working, and therefore I need to change it. I need to try to force and control what my life looks like. But you may find yourself getting to a point where you realize that doesn't make you feel happy. That doesn't feel good. It also doesn't work a lot of the time. We can try to control things, but it's probably not going to end up feeling in your control anyways. And then when we reach that point of being just kind of fed up with that way of operating in our lives, then we see more reason to want to trust in the thing or choose something different that might feel a little bit vulnerable because it's foreign and that feels uncomfortable. But we're also just uncomfortable over here anyways. So it's like, well, what's the point? I might as well try it and see what happens.
I think it might be interesting to explore why we choose resistance even though it's not working.
Hmm.
And we see it's not working and it feels like shit, we just keep doing it anyway.
There's something really comfortable about that.
Yeah. What is that?
Yeah. Maybe it's different in different contexts, but I always relate it back to this idea of like when we can see that what we're doing isn't working. Um, let's take loving self and body image and all of that stuff as an example. Let's say that someone sees that trying to achieve a certain body and control themselves externally and like beat themselves up to try to get somewhere, like that's not working, but they don't want to just accept their body how it is. They don't want to just like choose to love themselves. They don't want to just choose to trust that they are okay where they are and they are lovable how they are and they can just let themselves be and let their body do whatever it wants to do when they're just living their lives and prioritizing their happiness and their inner peace. They can see that that's available to them, but they're fighting it. They're resisting it. And I think a big part of that comes back to the shame that would come from letting go of the pursuit of trying to get somewhere else because they find some solace in the idea that at least they're doing something about it. Like, I might not like how my body looks, but at least I'm doing something about it. I might not be societally acceptable in the way that I look, or I might not be the hottest or the sexiest or the most attractive or the prettiest person in every single room that I enter, but at least I'm doing something about it. And if we can't say, at least I'm doing something about it, and we just end the sentence at, I don't feel like I'm good enough, or I'm not the prettiest, or I'm not the skinniest, or I don't meet the societal standards, or I'm not attractive in the eyes of most people in the world, and we just end the sentence there, then it forces us to have to really feel that shame rather than skimming on top of it with, but I'm doing something about it. And I think that
Yeah.
that same thing can be applied in all of these different contexts. With business, for example, I might not be as successful as I could be or as other people are, but at least I'm working hard. At least I'm doing all the things. At least I'm hiring all the mentors. At least I'm waking up at 4 a.m. and driving myself crazy and beating myself up for never getting anywhere because then it feels like I'm doing something about it, even though that doing something about it shows over time and time again isn't actually doing anything. But it gives us that ability to skim on top of the surface rather than feeling what that comes with.
Yeah. I think unconsciously we realize we have two choices. One, well, we're all, what this is all about is uh, finding a sense of inner value inside of ourselves is what we're chasing, wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel worthy of love and valuable inside of ourselves. And so we see that we have two choices. One, come if we don't get the thing that we want, coming to terms with the fact that we are not inherently worthy, valuable, or lovable. Or continue to try to work for it and hopefully change our circumstances, and continuing to try to work for it even though it's not working and it doesn't feel good, at least there's a possibility of finding what we're looking for, whereas the other option means that it's just never going to be available for you and you're going to have to come to terms with how unworthy and unlovable you truly are. But there's a third option that we just don't inherently see,
Mhm. Or we don't
which
trust.
that we don't trust. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is to just love yourself and
Yeah.
trust that you're worthy of it. Know that you're worthy of it, regardless of what you achieve, what you don't achieve, etc. And again, there's something that feels vulnerable about that because I think we just know that not everyone in the world is going to agree with us, right? Like if I feel worthy of love, even though I'm not successful, and then someone else sees that somehow and they have an opinion about that, like, oh, but she could be working harder. Or like she would be like, I would admire her more if she achieved XYZ or if she had actually made it as a business owner or whatever it is, whatever opinion we're projecting that that other person can have of us, that feels too vulnerable to face.
Right. How dare she feel fulfilled inside of herself when she's not making any money and she doesn't have any clients and she's doing weird shit on the internet, right?
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like for me to feel okay with other people's interpretation of that, that's that can feel very vulnerable when you yourself are still not okay with that. When you
Hmm.
yourself are still judging those aspects about you. So
Hmm.
really it comes back to where you're uncomfortable inside of someone else's opinion of you, where are you uncomfortable inside of that opinion of you?
That's right. Yeah. When we can ground ourselves in who we are and we can do that with ferocity, and it takes some time to get there, but it really is available where we can just own that. Hey, even if I don't make a lot of money and make a name for myself, that doesn't mean anything bad about me. Like, I can still love me. I can still see the beautiful qualities about myself. I can still see the purpose of me being here. I can still see that there are experiences that I get to have in this lifetime that are still beautiful and still abundant and might not look a certain way to the outside world. But to the outside world, they only see my circumstances that way because that's all that we've been bombarded with our whole lives. And we've been bombarded with that messaging because it makes other businesses money.
Or just because that was the ideology of the people that raised us. And so that's what we adopted, right? And
Right,
it's just perpetuated. And
right.
I don't know if we touched on this in our previous episode, but I do think that there's like a small um I idea that when you're on purpose, or when you're in alignment, you're going to have a big impact. And that having a big impact is proof. Oh, I'm in alignment.
Right. And sure, it could be a byproduct of it, but it's not like a yes or no type of thing, or it's not that black and white.
Where does this human need slash desire to have a big impact come from? It's not
Isn't it just our
enough.
need for love?
Yeah, it all comes back to that.
It
And it's like
does.
the more people can validate that we are worthy of the recognition that we're desiring, the more we can feel that for ourselves.
Right.
And the greater the impact we can have, the more validation that we feel for who we are. And
Hmm.
that's I feel like that can be hard to acknowledge when you recognize that that's something that you've been desiring inside of yourself. But when you can start to see that and release your grip from that need, that can feel more aligned than
Hmm.
continuing to chase whatever impact it was you were hoping to create. The
Yes,
choice is yours, essentially. There's no right or wrong.
absolutely.
Is there anything else that you'd like to explore with this topic?
Don't know. I feel like it's a repetition of a lot of the same things, but I think repeating them is good.
Yeah, I think that each one lends itself to a doorway in, and then when you explore it, it all leads back to the same thing. And I think that that's worth repeating
Hmm.
in,
I agree.
in order to find a semblance of whatever it is that you're desiring to feel inside of yourself. Sometimes hearing the same things over and over again said through a different lens is helpful.
I agree. Yeah. And so this language around being out of alignment or being trying to chase being in alignment, I think the overall takeaway from this is just to explore what you're making that really mean. Like when you say those things or you interpret your experience in that way, what are you actually saying? Because that's just a label that you've put onto it. That when you're saying, I feel out of alignment, are you saying, I feel sad and I think I shouldn't? Or I don't know where I'm going, I have no direction and I feel like I should. Because if we can create new language around what we're actually meaning when we interpret our experience as being out of alignment, then it's going to show us the actual path forward. It's not, I'm out of alignment, so I need to get into alignment. So I got to meditate and I got to let go of the trauma and I need to let go of these people and set boundaries or whatever. It's like, oh no, the actual thing that's being presented to me is my resistance to that I'm feeling sad, or my story about what that means, or my expectation that I'm supposed to be somewhere other than where I am. Because when we have that identification, it's so much more clear actually what the purpose is.
And I think that that's perpetuated quite a bit in the spiritual space. It's like you're supposed to be somewhere else other than where you are. If you have your normal 9 to 5 job, is that really an alignment for you?
You're right.
You know what I mean? So I check myself all the time. Who am I to say when someone else is in or out of alignment?
Hmm.
That's not my place to
Yeah.
say.
Or when I am even.
Right, right. It's all alignment.
Yeah.
My perspective is that we're here to make of it whatever the hell we want. That's, I
Yeah.
mean, it's all play.
And we do have that choice.
Yeah. And if that's not how you see it, that's totally fine.
Yeah. But you might end up getting sick of not seeing it that way eventually.
And then if that becomes your truth, then you'll meet yourself with as much acceptance as you can in that moment.
Yeah. That's what we encourage at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you so
This is
much
fun.
for everybody for watching and listening. Please leave us a rating and review. We want to hear from you. Tell us your story. Share your life story with us.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Share with us all of the triggers and the resistance that came up when you were listening to this, and do it in the
yeah,
most like hateful way ever.
well, they'll find us.
Yeah.
They'll find us one way or another.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you next week.